Thank you for joining me. I'm Dawn, and this is EA Zoom meetings, and we're going to work on an introduction to Uranian astrology, also known as the Hamburg School of Astrology, initiated by Alfred Whitty way back around World War I. Let me start sharing my screen. Bear with me. I apologize, this is taking a moment. There we go. Okay. You know, it's not as easy as it looks.
Don't say that. It's easy.
Here we go. This should do it. Okay. All right. I think we've got it together now. So, like I was saying, I wanted to introduce Uranian astrology. You use hypothetical planets and the midpoints of your what you're used to using, all of your standard luminaries and the rest of the planets, but also the Trans-Neptunians are hypothetical planets. They're mathematically calculated points in space that have had specific effects in charts, and they were derived by, like I said, Alfred Whitty, and he worked with his friends within the Kepler group to take this further. After he died, 4 more planets were added, hypothetical Trans-Neptunian planets were added. And then later, Reinhold Eberton took the whole precept and drew it further in other ways. He calls his branch, if you will, cosmobiology, and he does not use the Trans-Neptunian planets. Just a couple of things that are specific to Uranian astrology. The defining methods include using the planetary midpoints, which form mathematical equations, which define as word pictures. So just as we would say, you know, Venus on the ascendant infers beauty or a lovely demeanor, that is the type of word picture we would get out of these equations, if you will. And then we use the Equatorial Ascendant, and we use the meridian house system, so that your ascendant itself could be either in the 12th house or in the 1st house. But the Equatorial Ascendant is your ascendant if you were born on the equator within your specific longitude. And then specific also to Uranian astrology, we use very tight orbs for the most part because we're working with those midpoints, and when you start deriving points from midpoints, you're not usually working with the physical body itself, but the midpoint of the two. There is significant energy there of the two items, whatever they may be, melding together with that third impacting, and you can gain a lot from looking at these things, which I'll illustrate in a moment. Other things with that tight orb usage would be, we're using the hard aspects, the 8th harmonic, the 90 degrees, the 180, which I didn't list, the 45 degrees, and then 22.5 degrees as well. And we use the movable dial, which I don't have an illustration here, but I can explain it a little bit if anybody has questions about it. That or Google it. And using chart sorts for that 8th harmonic really can show you a lot as well. When we're working with Uranian astrology, we use solar arc progressions rather than secondary progressions, and The why of it, I don't know. A lot of people have a real uh, find a lot by using the solar arcs. I always have. I use both. I use everything. I use everything. The Trans-Neptunians have names like Cupido and Hades. There are asteroids of those names. Those are different bodies entirely. The asteroids are physical bodies. The Trans-Neptunians are calculations. So, and also that's where I learned about the 0 point, the Aries point at 0 Aries. And then by extrapolation, 0 Cancer, 0 Libra, 0 Capricorn. And Uranian astrology also uses Antisha. I'll go into some of those. I just want to show you how to get your Trans-Neptunians into your chart so you can begin using them. Astro.com is probably a pretty easy way, but just go into your extended charts where you would be setting up in your My Astro for what charts you want to use and the way you want them configured. And then click on the list of other horoscope factors and hypothetical planets. Once you click on that link, this right here will open up for you. Otherwise, just up here in the field, you can type HH and they'll all be included, and you can work your magic with them that way. I would do the HH, it's easiest. What I would really do is use my solar fire because that was the easiest. Let me just go back there real quick. Okay, it doesn't let me go back. Try one more time. There it is. Okay, so on solar fire, when you open your desired chart, if you just do a double click, or actually a right click into the blank space of your chart, then you'd be able to open up the displayed, click on your displayed points, and then you'd be able to find Uranians. I'll be honest, I don't know if solar fire automatically has Uranians or if I created that for myself. It's something that anybody can do just by, when you're going in there, if you don't see Uranians, just click on create, and then you can draw in the components that you want to, and then name your house system or your displayed points that way. So it's pretty easy to create. It's not rocket science. I like this picture, so I threw it in there. I thought it kind of showed us an idea of things that might not really be there, but they have an effect anyway. Look at how beautiful. So these are the Trans-Neptunian hypothetical planets and their definitions, how they impact, how they will manifest, and these are the symbols for them. So this is Cupido, and I've heard people say it two different ways, Cupido or Cupido. I like Cupido myself. And it represents marriage, family, tightly knit groups, or close-knit teams even, dealing in society. It deals with the arts and your creativity. The negative side of groups are cliques, and well, we don't need to go further there. Hades, these symbols are very intriguing. You'll notice on the Cupido symbol, that's actually Venus combined with Jupiter. And we would call her a super Venus. And, the opportunity for more Venusian expression is basically the way you would tie those together. She moves about 1.23 degrees annually. Hades, the symbol, I'm not going to try to discern what that might be, but it governs poverty, suffering, garbage, filth, secrets, loneliness, decomposition, antiques, antiquity, service in the high stations or the low stations. So giving service no matter what, whether it's, you're the president by serving or you're the wash maid, It also rules the underground and things that are buried. So I apologize. I'm not sure what's happening with the light, but there we go. A little bit better maybe. It rules the underground and things that are buried, and it moves 1 degree, 0.1 minute annually. And it is a semi-Plutonian flavor, those underground things. I mean, Hades says it all, right? It's not, it's not really unclear. Zeus, well, that looks like a rocket, so that suits Zeus. This image right here suits Zeus perfectly and represents fire, weapons, the military, machinery, conception. So there's a spark right there. You know, the idea of Zeus being a rocket, that's also a spark, and conception, whether it's, you know, intellectual or physical conception, and creativity and purposeful action, a drive to act, kind of like Super Mars, right? So that moves just under half a degree annually. And Kronos rules the highest quality, the highest authority, government rulers, nobility, mastery, being able to master anything that you try, anything that you're working toward. Mastery implies hard work, effort, prolonged effort, but it also rules a certain amount of independence, like I'm the boss independence, and anything above the average, so superiority, and that moves just under half a degree annually as well, and we would define that very strongly as a super Saturn. These first four, are the four that Alfred Whitty actually started with. The following four that I'm about to go into, those were defined further. The calculations for them that Alfred Whitty began were completed after his death by his Kepler team of friends. And they worked on it obviously all together, but they finished it without him. So Apollon, and you could say that Apollon or however you want, I'm going to call it Apollon, symbolizes great success. It is a super Jupiter. You see the symbol is a double-based Jupiter, basically. And it's almost like tying Gemini with Jupiter a little bit. Symbolizes great success, expansion, multitudes or many, tying in that Gemini feel. Open spaces, peace, commerce, trade, science, great intellect, the big picture. Doesn't so much deal with the finer details, so that's a little bit non-Gemini, right? Admetos, this next one is Admetos, and the symbol seems to reflect time and being pretty heady with the Mercury symbol there. So that ties in. But it rules cycles, beginnings and endings, depth, focus, specialization, endurance, lasting power. It is few or less, or lesser amounts. It is raw materials, which is interesting because you might want to tie that to Hades, but it is raw materials, things that you start with. So I think that's probably the cyclical idea there. It rules real estate and being at a standstill, like a stopped watch, perhaps. It rules death and blockages, and it rules frozen states. So that moves 35 minutes a year, and it's somewhat Saturnian, somewhat Mercurial, and somewhat Plutonian in flavor, I would say. And then Vulcanus. Vulcanus dictates supreme strength and power, issues of control, mighty forces, fate, destiny, violent eruptions, volcanoes, right? And it moves 32 minutes a year, and we would call that a super Pluto. If we're thinking about ways that this might manifest, super Pluto is your quick go-to to give you get you on the right track. And then Poseidon symbolizes enlightenment and wisdom. This is like a super Pisces or a super Neptune. Notice that it's Pisces on its side. So with that, the life force, spirituality, light, universality, mediums, visionaries, and intellectuals moves less than 29 minutes a year. And again, super Neptune. So this chart here, let me just ask, does anybody have questions about those, any of those Trans-Neptunians? No? Okay. So these extra symbols, the Trans-Neptunians, are shown here in my chart. This is just my chart. I just wanted to show the meridian house and these other house systems, because these are systems that are used by the Uranian astrology. You turn your house for the focus that you're looking for out of your chart. Some other teachings do this, but these are specific to this one. So with the meridian house system, we have the Equatorial Ascendant. Here's my natal ascendant here at 9 Scorpio, but the Equatorial Ascendant has me at 24 Scorpio, and that really reads very well in my chart, very strongly, being squared to Venus at the top, and with Jupiter right on the Equatorial Descendant there. And the Equatorial Ascendant is something that you could read you know, well, I said it right here. This point will denote the soul's own sense of self while operating in this world. So you would use your ascendant as how you present yourself to the world, but the Equatorial Ascendant is more like your soul's self in this world. And I think that makes good sense. Okay. Thanks, Wanda. And so with the meridian house ascendant, you're looking for how your soul wants to operate in the world that we're in. And that can help us. That's so frustrating. So that can help us, you know, on our evolutionary astrology, when we're looking into that, that can help us learn about that as well. I'm going to take a moment to turn on the lights. I didn't realize the light was fading so fast here. So if you'll give me just a moment. Much better. Okay. All right. So that's this horoscope right here, is the meridian house ascendant with the equatorial ascendant. I'm just going to move forward in a moment after reading about these. The sun horoscope, you find that by actually moving the sun to the 4th house. So then the 4th house cusp would be 6 Libra, and the whole chart would spin that way. And that would be defining for your physical sense of self, as well as your relationship to the father. With Uranian astrology, you follow the sun for the father, and as with most, right? And then the moon horoscope is found by moving the moon to the 10th house, and that suggests the natives' emotionality, their emotional life, as well as the relationship to the mother. And then the nodal horoscope moves the north node to the 1st house cusp. And so then that would define intimate relationship, karmic connections, that kind of thing. And on the following page, what I've done is I've put those together. I did my best anyway. You know, it's not like these houses are offered anywhere. I certainly couldn't find them. If anybody knows, by all means, let me know. But I couldn't make them happen in my solar fire other than just working them around that way. So here's the sun as it is to the 4th house cusp right there. And this is how the chart has spun that way. And it tells a lot about, you know, you'll be able to discern a lot from your own when you move your chart this way. And then the moon, a horoscope, putting the moon up at the top at the midheaven really shows a lot as well for you. And then the nodal horoscope, everybody's probably interested in that. There's a lot of people really big on the astrology for looking into relationship. It's how we find ourselves, right? So another practice used in cosmobiology as well as in the Uranian astrology is the modulus chart sort. And here what we have is, here's the 360-degree sort. This is how your chart, my chart in particular, played out through the 360 degrees. But as we go on down, we can see I've got the 180 here, and we can see how things shift. So consider that the 360 to the 180 is just folding it in half and still laying your components out that way. So with my son specifically being at, this teaches you a whole new way of looking at a chart, and I think that for everybody this can be invaluable, an invaluable way of learning to read a chart, just because it becomes so much easier to see and read things. So you can eyeball them quickly to get your bearings through something. So my sun is at 6 Libra in a 180 sort, because 6 Libra is at the 186th degree in the 360-degree dial. It then becomes, in the 180 sort, it becomes the 6th degree, right? And so everything follows through that same way in the 180 sort. Now, when you fold that in half, in other words, squaring your chart, taking it down to a 90-degree sort, we can see how that moves through. The sun does remain in the 6th degree, and that's pretty straightforward. My moon is at 19 Cancer, 18, 19 Cancer. So here it is right here. On the 90-degree sort, it's in the 18th degree, because there's only 90 degrees, and that would be 0 Cancer, wouldn't it? 90 degrees, that's how that works through a 360-degree dial. So you can start to see relationships when you advance into this and this 45-degree sort, and into the 30 and into the 22.5. You start to see more relationships than of the smaller aspects than what you see normally when you're just looking at a chart, especially for newbies, especially for people who are newly learning their aspects and their finer tuning of their knowledge that way. So with this right here, the 22.5-degree sort, it's pretty cool. Because when we get down in here, we start to really see, oh my gosh, look at that. The sun and Chiron and Venus right there together, with Pluto right exactly between. Pluto is the midpoint of my sun, Venus, Chiron. And then we see further, we've got Mars, and we've got the ascendant with Poseidon right between. You know, things just start popping out at you when you start looking at them in this different way. We've also got, you know, you can see that there's Venus Chiron, there's Jupiter, and there's Saturn, and that actually measures right between as well. So there's so much more to these chart sorts, you know, more than what I'm able to just show in a brief presentation. But right here we've got the moon node Kronos. This is big in my life. I mean, I have to conquer my issues with time and the way I feel about it emotionally. So in order to move forward on my soul's growth, that's just one way of reading that, but it's really impacted me a lot. So I'll just move forward. I want to work on the midpoints, because midpoints are huge. Midpoints, studying midpoints in a person's chart with the TNPs, the Trans-Neptunian planets, and without, when you compare the two, you will be able to see how huge they are in really defining. You can learn so much about yourself that might have been confusing previously, and about others when you look at these things. And I'll be able to illustrate that here in a moment. Some huge resources for midpoint interpretation. 2 books that first got me started and just kept me hooked. Rules for Planetary Pictures by Whitty and Liefeld. Liefeld worked with Alfred Whitty deeply, and he was the one who carried through to finish creating the calculations for the other four, the final four Trans-Neptunians. So he did so much of that, and he worked with Alfred Whitty on setting up these rules, how the equations play out, potentials of the energies playing out. And they're really very detailed. I mean, this was written, in the, I forget when the first printing was, but I think it was 36. I don't know why I think it was 1936. And it was before they had TV, but they actually had a degree for television. So anyway, then later, Reinhold Eberton made his own without the Trans-Neptunians, and that's the combination of stellar influences. These two books are invaluable for going further into studying midpoints, which midpoints are huge. I was looking up my book, Rules for Planetary Pictures, because I can't find my book anywhere. I had this book for years and I can't find it right now. So I ordered another one, darn it. And, but when I was looking at that, I found the combination of stellar influences, and A. Walker did a review on that combination of stellar influences, which was a glowing report. But in the end says, this is the future of astrology. And I totally agree. Midpoints are huge. Those who don't use them probably would start if they're seeing this. Oopsie. Oh no. I don't know how to get back into slideshow. All right. Apparently I do. So advancing. I have the chart of a friend. This is a man, and I work with this man. And a friend is a little much. We're friendly at work. I just happened to, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago was his birthday. And I said, oh, cool. If you get your time, let me take a look. And he asked his mom, and he got it exact to the minute. And I was like, very cool. So I brought it home. I took a look at it. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm using this chart because this is, well, you'll see in a minute. You'll see in a minute. So when we look at this chart here, the first one, excuse me, just to get your bearings on this, Sun conjunct Mercury in Virgo in the 4th house. This person is a talker, likes to communicate, and we see that Mercury and the Sun are skipped steps, resolving to the North Node in the 12th house, Gemini. And there's his standard ascendant at Cancer. And we can see that with the Sun in Virgo, we got that South Node over in the 6th, and Sagittarius conjunct Moon and Neptune. And there's a lot of Sagittarius going on there in the 6th house. And this person has fun at work. So that's good. By EA tenets, we might say that our friend's sole direction of growth is to delve deeply into his subconscious, seeking the root of his self-undoing through communication and detailed thought processes, and that he would want to work by using that resolving node, initiating and forward drive to lead within groups. The reason being that I forget what my reasoning was right now. I don't know. That's what I said. And so when we dig deeper, I mean, there's so much more to, and from an evolutionary standpoint to what's happening for this person. But that I just wanted to go briefly and touch on a couple of things. So when we add the Uranian points, we can see a lot more going on And the Equatorial Ascendant is there at 14 Gemini. And that speaks more strongly than 6 Cancer ever could to this person in his actual presentation of self. It's huge. But it also recapitulates to the Sun-Mercury conjunction. Now, right down here on this Sun-Mercury conjunction, we've got Zeus. So if we recall, Zeus is that firecracker. Zeus is so much over the top Mars drive, right? Super Mars, that this person cannot help but talk. And I mean, it can be a good thing because he's funny and he's lighthearted and he's fun, but by the same token, maybe, you know, maybe you should take a break sometimes. So that Equatorial Ascendant really speaks to that. Additionally, we can see that, let's see, we've got Chiron in the 12th house with Hades. That says a lot, you know, probably some issues. So just touching on those 4 things, we've got the North Node Gemini in the first, on the Equatorial Ascendant, combined with Kronos. This speaks of true leadership capabilities. This person is supposed to be an authority on something. Put that Sun, Zeus, Mercury in Virgo, and that would be, you know, details and looking toward health and dealing with all kinds of things, Virgo. And, you know, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it's obvious, right? The Chiron and Hades in the 12th and the Pluto on Poseidon. Poseidon, if we recall, is super Neptune. It's Poseidon is seeking your spiritual soul growth that way. So Pluto to that in the 5th in Libra, he may find his soul growth through his children, perhaps. But anyway, breaking it down just briefly, this man really should be a leader. That Kronos, that Zeus on the sun with Mercury, that Kronos to the Equatorial Ascendant, he should be a leader. Right now, I don't see that he's working on that or that he even knows that he's supposed to work on that. I don't think he can get his big head out of the way for it. He's got those leadership talents. He definitely speaks loudly enough and vociferously enough. But the problem, it seems to be that Chiron and Hades in the 12th and Gemini, it is opposed by Uranus right there on the descendant with Jupiter. And it appears that that's offered, as I wrote here, some significant damage regarding his estimation of his intellectual capabilities, his capacity. He feels that he's dumb. He thinks and he says, I'm just a big dumb guy. And he is. He's probably, he's the archetypal meathead. He goes to the gym and he works out and he's big and beefy and, you know, he's somewhat attractive to people. He's, you know, he behaves as though he's very, very attractive. Everybody has their type, right? But he really wants to appear most attractive to everyone that he meets. He wants to be known as that person. You know, I'm the hottest thing going is what he wants. So knowing him the way I do, I did copy his Sabian symbols of his ascendant and his equatorial ascendant here, just to show the difference between the two. Cancer, for one, this person is not shy by any stretch of the imagination and does not keep himself under wraps in any way. There is no wrapping, there is no shell on this crab whatsoever. So, and the only way that Cancer, that I was able to see that Cancer does correlate to the ascendant is that he has the traditional moon face that Cancer will at times confer. So he has a rounder face, and it really, that does speak to that. That's the only way I was able to find. But two nature spirits dancing under the moonlight, the play of invisible forces in all manifestations of life, leading to creative imagination. Well, I don't know about his imagination, but I know that he knows about his imagination, and he doesn't think he has one. He doesn't think he's bright enough. He doesn't think he's smart enough, and he finds his own only value in how good he looks and how hard he works. But he's young, so we're going to give him time. With the Equatorial Ascendant, we've got Gemini 15. It's 1401 Gemini was the Equatorial Ascendant. And that degree is so specific. It's two Dutch children talking to each other, exchanging their knowledge. Could this be more poetic? Could this be more indicative of the chart that we were just looking at? I don't think so. For one, he's a total Hollander. Is it square? Yeah, okay, I won't say that. But so working forward, like I said, talk, and he's got to share information. So what we have to do is try to find a way to help him realize that he's got a lot to share, that he's got a lot more than just how strong he is and how pretty he thinks he is. So this symbol adds something vital to the preceding one. Transcendent experiences and supernormal faculties must be tested and clarified through the use of normal and collectively tested means of communication. So that's what he does. He tests communication in every possible way. And which may mean through scientific procedures. So the Dutch children seem to have been introduced by the subconscious mind of the formulator of the symbol because of an association with neatness and the open spirit of discussion which has prevailed in Holland. They are children because the new experiences are still very fresh and require certification. This demands a clean and open mind, eager to test what is experienced in an exchange of views with one's peers. So that he really does this. He really lives this degree wholeheartedly. So the need for objectivity has to be met, and this implies the confirmation of any subjective realization by some similar experience. So it seems like he's going to be able to grow out of that "I think I'm dumb and this is all I have to offer" mindset that he's got going. Right here, I wanted to address orbs and tolerance, and we'll get back to our friend in a moment, but this is his chart, by the way, drawn out by the orbs. And I put it to the 22.5 degree modulus sort and just copied it here and highlighted the ones that were the closest, the most meaningful, and would be described by the very closest orbs, the very smallest orbs, closest degrees touching. But I did want to point out his midpoint of Mercury and Ascendant is on the Aries point. So I think that's huge right there, because he does bring his communication to the world very well. So moving forward, we have these degrees here very closely set up, and I just to show you, the orbs are going to be so tight. This Poseidon right here at 309, 303 is a bit of a stretch, but because it's a 22.5 degree modulus sort, we would allow to 7.5 minutes. And that's specifically because when we're dividing the chart by 16, you take 360 divided by 22.5 goes in 16 times. And so then we divide the orb allowance. Normally you're going to allow a 2 degree orb. In a 360 chart for midpoints, you're going to allow a 2 degree orb. But because this is a 22.5 sort, we're going to divide that 2 degrees by that same 16 that we divided the 360 by to get the 22.5. And that's what breaks us down to 7.5 minutes, okay? So, because we took 120 minutes, right? I hope that's clear. I hope I didn't go too fast for it. If I did, somebody ask me at the end and I'll go back through it. Significantly telling about this is that midpoint there. and I was just making a funny, which I didn't need to. I really like this person. He's very, very fun, very nice. So also in the second column here, we have the ascendant and the equatorial ascendant equal to Mercury, Jupiter. I mean, that's another huge one, and they're only by a 3-minute orb. So that also is huge. He definitely has to bring something about what he has to share, his communication to the world. He has to express. He probably has some very important things. So below, I've copied those tightest midpoints and then kind of, tried to read them to see what we would come up with. Just basics, nothing too outrageous. So the first one is the Mars equaling the midheaven and the equatorial ascendant, and that just happens to be at 27 Aries. And when I read these, I will always tie the flavor of the sign and the house to them, because they'll inform the end result. They will, for sure. We know that. So we have a desire here to meld his soul's purpose, that equatorial ascendant and the midheaven would speak to soul's purpose, into a physical worldly manifestation. That physical being the Mars and that desire being the Mars. Another way this can be read would be desires to be seen as a big shot, being the highest, the midheaven. And so it depends. Is a person expressing through their highest possibilities, or not so much? So you can read things either way. And it all depends on who you're dealing with and at what phase they're in. So he desires to be seen as a big shot. He does, and he believes the best he can be is only in a physical plane. He does not seek to go further mentally or spiritually so far. The next degree that I have is the equatorial ascendant, which is equaling Kronos, Poseidon midpoint. So Kronos is about authority, and Poseidon being that super Neptune. I would say he has the potential to lead by example in spiritual growth, lead others this way, and that would be good for his soul. But right at this point, he's going to want to show himself as being powerful and lively, Poseidon being that life force, that life force is the best way to say it. So he wants to use that only so far. The next is the Venus in equaling the Sun Poseidon midpoint. So right now, I mean, you will hear him say, "I love myself," so frequently. He says it a lot. I love myself. I love myself. And that's as far as he can go right now, but he's got a greater potential here. And I would say that greater potential would be to express his natural authority, which he doesn't know about yet, in a way that actually shines as an example for others. And actually, he probably could work with children very well with this capability. His playfulness would really allow him to work with children and lead by example that way. Once he figures it out, yeah, that would be great. Kronos, Sun, equatorial ascendant, most superior ego representation of the soul self to the world, or highest supreme leadership capabilities. This is a really good way of reading this, with that extra Leo being in the first decade of Leo as well, would quadruple that effect, I would say. Yeah, that Venus, equatorial Kronos, he does need to be noticed for physical beauty, need to be considered, hot. Needs to be considered hot, really needs that. And I would say he probably doesn't have a problem. There's probably a lot of little girls who are just going gaga, so it's probably easier for him to really work with that need. get that need fulfilled. So the next one is Apollon, equivalent to the Moon Pluto midpoint, and in Scorpio. So I put multitudes. Apollon has to do with many, of obsessive, unconscious, emotional outpouring. Or his mom was really something, a piece of work is what I was thinking, just based on that Hades 12. Yeah. Anyway, so there are other potentials for this, but that's what I was seeing in the chart when I read it. The node equals Venus, the Venus Chiron midpoint at 1 Cancer. So there's a potential for receiving or delivering wounding or healing. You know, you get one, you get the other, right? A lot of times we hope we get the other. In intimate relationships, it really does seem that that would be the potential there. And I would say that he's probably had that in the past, some damage through relationship, and probably doesn't know that he doesn't have to actually perpetuate it yet. So with the node also equaling Mercury Chronos, but that's at 5 Cancer, or 5 Leo with the Mercury Chronos. This is the 22.5-degree sort. This is how we narrow that down. So the midpoint is at 5 Leo there. And if you combine it to the Venus Chiron, which is what you can do with these equations, because that's what they are, you could say potential for receiving or delivering wounding or healing in intimate relationships through an outpouring of significant verbiage. So I'm envisioning the possibility that as a child, he probably had a heap of difficult verbiage dropped on his head, and he learned to just keep talking to save his skin, possibly, to save his feelings, possibly. And so that's a way that he learned to heal himself or to protect himself. But also it's something that he's probably perpetuated a little bit by sending that out, because I don't sense a filter of any kind yet on what he puts out. So by the same token, we know that that's also the way to fix the problem, is to use your words and your empathy. So the next one that I have listed here is Zeus equaling Saturn and Admetos, the Saturn Admetos midpoint at 6 Leo being excessive restrictions, limitations, and setbacks, or incredible amounts of stamina and staying power. And I would say he's currently expressing the stamina, because he works very hard at work and always wanted to pitch in and work hard, and then he goes home and he works out. So, you know, that kind of thing. At least that's what he says. He looks like it too, so that's what I get. And then we've got Chiron to Neptune Cupido. So wounded or healed by the dissolution of family. Perhaps there was a divorce in early years. I didn't look further for it. I just went for the midpoints, basically. Or healing of his heart through family spiritual pursuits. Again, hanging out with the kids is probably a really good thing for him. He probably really grows through that. And then Uranus equaling Sun Mars. Ego desires chaos and upheaval, needs exciting ways to burn off physical energy excesses, which that doesn't have anything to do with the Trans-Neptunians, but that's just one way you can read that midpoint. It looks to me like we're narrowing down on time. I probably got about 10 minutes or less, so I am closing up here. I just wanted to show these are some things from the Alfred Whitty book, Rules for Planetary Pictures, and this is how he defined the way these things would work. The sun, I don't know if anybody's learned about this in other things, but the sun rules the day, the moon rules the hour, and the meridian or the midheaven rules the minute. And I thought that was key to pay attention to if you're using these items for mundane or horary astrology. And then here is his chart, if you will, definitions of those same Trans-Neptunians. I thought I would include it because mine are one thing, but get it from the source, right? And this is Whitty's proposed sign rulership chart and a picture of Alfred Whitty. I understand he was a quiet, thoughtful man, and truly I think he was a genius to come up with these things. But external ruler, internal ruler, and you can look at these and study them on your own. These seem to make sense in a lot of ways, and then in other ways it can be confusing, and you wonder where he was coming from, and I don't have any more on it. But quoting out of Astro Stock Trader is where I got this, that Friedrich Sigrun helped with the other 4 planets calculations, the last 4 Trans-Neptunians. That's why this chart right here only has the first 4 shown: Kronos, Cupido, Hades, Zeus. So that's why the other 4 aren't in there as planetary rulers, because he hadn't finished. And oh no, I hit that link. Oh, hallelujah.
Dawn, I have your slides. Would you like me to find mine? Oh, no, there you are. You're back.
Okay, good. Because, oh, please. Okay, yay. I just want to make sure what slide I'm on. Okay, I'm on the right one. Thanks for the help. Okay, natal and solar arc. So illustrating the method here that you would put the 2 together. I used the Trans-Neptunians, and for this person here shortly, he's got his Venus-Mars midpoint equaling Hades. I would see probably some sort of unearthing of unhappiness within his marriage, possibly, you know, a blow up, or maybe she finds something out, or he finds something out that isn't going to make anybody happy. And that's Hades is square to it. Where's Hades? Right here. Yeah. So there's that. And then Venus, Kronos, Saturn, great pleasure found while working. We can see this. We could see that already. But this is new with Saturn. This is the Saturn right here. And here was Hades that I was talking about a moment ago. And Mars node, midpoint equaling Saturn, hard determined effort with other men, active camaraderie while working. Totally, that's what he does, that's who he is. Jupiter, Zeus, midpoint equaling Cupido, simply read, an opportunity for a spark within the family. Zeus doesn't have to be a happy spark. Zeus can be like Jupiter. Zeus is opportunity, whether it's positive or negative. But Jupiter, Zeus, some sort of uprising or upheaval or big explosion within the family. And it can be happy, it can be beautiful, but it might not be. Just based on that Hades reading, Venus, Mars, Hades. And these are all of my links, and I just wanted to kind of put those things together to, you know, just try to introduce and lead the way. These links, there's so many of them, and it's huge out there, the things that you can come across. Michael Moncasey has not used, this link right here is not using the Trans-Neptunians. John Sandbach is not using the Trans-Neptunians, but they are invaluable for midpoints research. So I strongly recommend them. The rest of these have done their Uranian, Trans-Neptunian research. So does anybody have any questions of any kind?
So Dawn, okay, so we have the inner planets, and then we have the outer planets, and we have the higher octave of the inner planets. Would you say that the Trans-Neptunians are a next higher octave from that?
Totally.
Yes. Okay, great. Beautiful.
Thank you for pointing that out. It hadn't occurred to me, but yes, definitely.
I had a comment at this brilliant presentation. What I noticed with your example, would you say that the Trans-Neptunians have? I saw so many correlations with the South Node. Well, actually, the nodal axis, period, and those squares to the nodes.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot in the chart. You know, when you look at the chart, you see, okay, he's got the North Node in the 12th house, so you know he's supposed to head toward a more, he needs to try to figure out what goes on inside, right? So far, he has no way of doing that with everything that's on the South Node really kind of driving the bus, so to speak. So when you put those Trans-Neptunians in there, you really see a lot more flavor coming together there, a lot more, which would tell you why he would be, another reason, another layer to why he would be not really looking at his North Node, not really trying to visit his 12th house. It's not a happy place, but he's got to figure it out, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's what was so brilliant, you know, how they meshed together. I mean, it was just wow, amazing.
When you throw them into your chart, you will be amazed. You'll be like, well, yeah. So did I make everything clear enough? I mean, I know sometimes I know what I'm trying to say, so I don't say enough.
Yeah, very clear. Yeah, beautiful.
All right. Well, if anybody,
Yeah, very clear. Very clear.
good.
I have a comment. Kepler and Sirius have the Trans-Neptunians, and I never knew what they were, so I never added them into my chart, but now I'm going to.
Yeah,
See what I
I
can
want to
see.
get that serious. I need that serious. I'm imagining that Sirius probably has those house systems as well.
It has a lot of different, it probably does. It's very powerful. Yeah, it's got so many features that it's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to get that. Yeah. Well, you all have been wonderful. I thank you for letting me share it with you. It's something that, you know, I learned a long time ago that I really loved, but I did kind of get away from it a bit just because solar fire, you know, it has the Trans-Neptunians, but it's not really headed in that direction so much. And I feel that, you know, on astro.com, just saying, you know, just posting so clearly, these are not actual planets. I really believe that one day these are going to be discovered, you know, as actual something out there. And at that point, we'll know when we know, right? All right. Well, thank you for letting me bring everything forward that way. And
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much, Dawn. That was absolutely brilliant as usual. Thanks so much. And thanks from all of us. See you next time.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Dawn.
Thank you.